Hey everyone, how's it going? Sitting low, just hanging out in the garage doing a little bit of wiring on this C10 project, and I'm wiring up my compressor. And I've already pretty much got the compressor wired up. The only thing I got to wire left still is the relay that powers it. So I figured I would just kind of include you guys in this video and show you guys, try to teach you a little bit about relays and what they are, what they do, why we need them, and just different scenarios and how you can wire them to do different things, and work with the key, work with a switch, work with however you need to wire them. So this will be kind of a fun video. We'll get into the basics of wiring up relays. We'll get to play with some wires, we'll play with some crayons, and it'll be a good time. So stick around and let's learn a little bit about these doodads right here, these little relays. Okay, you guys, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and take a look at the relays and the different types. Right here I got two relays. As you can see, this one on the left hand side has only got four tabs, and this one over here has 5 tabs. They're pretty much the same, although this one does a little bit different functions. This is referred to as a single pull, single throw relay. It's just more or less used to control one circuit. And this guy over here is a single pull, double throw relay. And this one's more used for like power locks, power windows, convertible tops, and any kind of situations where you need to either reverse polarity or have some kind of like indicator warning light or something like that. So you probably aren't going to use too many of these for unless you're doing like power locks, power windows, and stuff like that. So you're more or less going to be using for wiring up fans, pumps, and compressors, and shit like that. You're more or less going to just use the ST relay, the single pull, single throw relay. And as you can see there, the terminals, I don't know if you can see it, let me see. You can see the terminals are numbered. We got 87, 30, 86, and 85 over here. Now those numbers all mean something, and I'm going to show you guys what those numbers mean in a second. Now, before we get into it, let's just talk a little bit about what a relay is. Now, when I used to work at a car stereo shop back in the early 1930s, when I was first introduced to these things, my garage manager at the time pretty much worded it to me like this. He said a relay is an electromagnetic mechanical switch, which sounds complicated, but it really isn't. It's exactly what the term implies. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this one apart here, because this is just a spare one I had laying around, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean by the electromagnetic mechanical switch portion of it. So okay, before I go ahead and take this thing apart, I just want to elaborate a little bit more on the whole electromagnetical portion of the relay. Now inside this relay, before we take it apart, I'm just going to tell you there's a coil of wire that is just rounded round and round and round and round. And what happens is, when you energize it, power, ground, or vice versa, you could put ground over here, power over here. What that does is it creates a magnetic field. It basically magnetizes, and what happens when that coil magnetizes is inside here there's also another set of contacts that once you magnetize the coil, that contact will shift over and complete your circuit from 87 to 30. So now that we kind of know that, let's go ahead and take it apart and take a peek. I've already had this one apart, but let's go ahead and pop it apart again, if I can. I can't find my little pick tool anywhere, so I guess I'm kind of limited to using this, but whatever. Okay, now that we got this thing apart, we can see what I'm talking about. See that coil of wire in there? That is the electromagnetic coil of the relay. And then you can see that thick copper wire, well, thicker copper wire going here to here. That is what completes your main circuit, okay? So what happens is when you magnetize power, ground on the electromagnetic coil side, you see this little contact here. It will shift over and it will complete your circuit from 30 to 87, and when you de-energize the coil, it'll flick back over. And I'm gonna go ahead and just rig up just a little battery and a couple of wires just to kind of demonstrate and show you guys what I'm talking about, so stay tuned. Okay guys, so here before me, got a small power sports battery, got my multimeter, got the relay, and a couple of these spade terminals, which I typically like to use to connect relays. These spade terminals just go right on there just fine. Now they make all kinds of different harnesses and stuff for that. You know, I'll show you guys a couple of those. Like here's one for example. And as you can see, you know, these are pretty much the same harnesses. This is one for the single pole double throw, so it has the 5th wire there. But as you can see, they got different color wires. You know, this one has a red wire, this one has a white wire, this one has a black wire going to what would be the brown wire over here. So like I said, these harnesses, you know, although they're convenient for simply being able to just plug the relay right on into the harness, they can actually, you know, when it comes to wiring them, can be somewhat confusing because, you know, you're trying to tap into different color coded wires, and you know, I've read numerous forum articles where people are chiming in saying I'm trying to wire up this and that and the other thing, and I don't know where the green wire goes. So, you know, like I said, even some of these got green wires, some got purple wires, some got freaking, you know, like I said, they're not 100% color coded. So that is why it's important to remember those numbers, the 87, the 85, the 86, and the 30, because if you know what side of the relay those different color wires are going to, you'll be a lot better off trying to figure out how to wire these stupid harnesses. But anyway, setting those aside. So like I said, got my small battery here, got my meter right here. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on for you. Turn the speaker on, and I got it set to continuity right now, so when a circuit is complete, you'll hear the meter beep. Okay. Complete circuit. Closed circuit. Open. Closed. Open. So let's go ahead and let's stick a couple of these spade terminals on here just to make hooking it up to our relay a little bit simpler. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys just exactly what goes on when you energize what I like to refer to as the trigger side or the coil side of the relay. As you can see, I got a ground wire going to terminal number 85, going straight to our negative post on our battery, and this red lead going to our friend 86. And I'm just going to temporarily tap this one to the battery terminal just so you guys can watch and see what happens. Now, remember these contacts I was telling you about earlier. When I energize this coil, as I explained, it's going to shift this contact over and complete our circuit from 87 to 30. Okay, so let's just go ahead and watch how this thing works. Alright, contact. Closed circuit. Open. On. Off. Closed. Open. So now that we get that, let's go ahead and hook this thing up to our multimeter. Where'd that spade terminal go? Here she is. Stick this sucker on here again. I'm gonna go ahead and wire this one up to, plug this one in I should say, to terminal number 87. And get this one going here to terminal number 30. Make sure our speaker's on. Speaker's on. So now when I energize the relay, you should hear the multimeter beep, indicating that it's completing the circuit from terminal 87 to 30. So here we go. On. Off. On. Off. Pretty simple, huh? Alright, so while I just pop this cap back on, let's just take a moment to kind of talk about what we know what they are and pretty much how they work, but we need to figure out now, why do we need relays? Why do we even need to wire these things in? And the answer is very simple, okay? That you can wire these things so many different ways. You can wire them for you know, to turn on when the key's on. You can have it wired up to a toggle switch. You can have it to like some kind of thermostatic on-off switch. You can have it to like some kind of a, you know, any way you can think of, you can pretty much wire this thing, but the fundamentals and the basics are the same. As long as this coil 85 and 86 are energized, it's going to complete the circuit from 87 to 30. Okay, so the main reason why we use these things is because what relays do is they allow you to control a high current circuit with a low current amperage input. Okay, so let's say I wanted to run my compressor just off a toggle switch. It would only work for so long because that compressor is probably rated at about 30 amps of max current draw, and you know, most toggle switches have a rating of maybe 15 amps. Okay, so if I just ran a typical toggle switch to my compressor, sure, it would work, but I would literally be starving my compressor of current. It would be, you know, getting hot. My compressor wouldn't be working as good as it should be, and it would ultimately end up burning that switch down because you're trying to draw 30 amps of current through a 15 amp switch. Now, the beautiful thing about relays is you can mount these things anywhere. You typically find these like under the fuse compartment of your car's hood or whatever. But what these, like I said before, these allow you to control a high amperage circuit with a low amperage input. Alright, you guys, just to further elaborate on the whole high amperage circuit with the low amperage input, basically what I mean when I say that is, let's say for example you've got a fuel pump, you've got a set of electric fans, you got a water pump, or you got an air compressor for example, and let's just say that compressor or that pump draws, let's just say 20 amps of current. Okay, you can complete that 20 amp circuit, okay, by simply energizing this coil using, you can literally use, I believe these relays only require like 0.5 amps of current to energize, so you can control this 20 amp circuit with literally like a 1 amp input, if you get what I'm saying. So what that allows you to do is, let's say, you know, if you're running your fuel pump or your fans or whatever, you're gonna want to run, you know, at least, let's just say 16 to 14 gauge wire to those type of appliances. An air compressor, anything that draws anything more than 20 or 30 amps, you're going to want to step it up to maybe 10 gauge or maybe even 8 gauge or what have you. So without this relay, if you wanted to control that pump, you would literally have to run from your battery a 10 gauge wire into the cabin of the car, then into the toggle switch, and then from the toggle switch all the way out of the car, and then to the pump or whatever. So you're gonna have, you know, once you start adding in fans, the fuel pump, the water pump, the compressor, the LED light bars, the this, the that, and the other thing, by the time you get done with that, you're gonna have a whole mess of thick gauge wires going in and out of the cabin of your car, and it's just, you know, not the safest thing in the world. Relays allow you to, you know, control those circuits remotely, okay, with a low amperage input. So, and plus another cool thing is, you know, it's like a switch that controls stuff for you without physically having to activate a switch, as I'll explain later about the thermostatic control switches and whatnot, like stuff like that. So you know, let's say for example you just want your fuel pump to come on when you simply turn the key on, and you don't want to have to flip a freaking toggle switch every time you want your fuel pump to turn on and off. You know, you can use a relay, tie it into your switch power on your key, ground the other side, and Bob's your auntie. So just kind of wanted to explain a little bit more. These pretty much, you know, keep it so you can simplify your wiring, keep your wiring tidy, control certain functions without physically having to, you know, turn them on and off themselves. They'll have you know, you can have sensors and other switches controlling these to control the output, and you know, you'll get what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and play with some crayons now, and I'm going to show you guys a couple of different wiring scenarios and how you could do how you can wire these things slightly differently. So I'll be right back. Okay, now I got my notepad. As you can see here, we got kind of a little schematic going on here. We got our battery here, and we got our pump here, That could be a fuel pump, a compressor, an LED light bar. It could be a set of fans or whatever. You know, it could be anything you're trying. Pretty much the pump represents what you're trying to power up by using the relay, okay? Now, this red marker, crayon, whatever you want to call it, is going to represent our positive 12 volts. And this black one here is going to represent our negative, our ground. So, first and foremost, I want to get this pump to turn on using a relay. How am I going to go about doing that? Well, there's, like I said, there's many different ways you can go about wiring it, but this is pretty much going to be the simplest and easy. This is going to be what I call relay trigger switched through ground, and I'll show you guys that right now. Okay, so first and foremost, you got your battery down here, power wire coming out, going into a fuse holder. Always use a fuse holder. I don't care who you are, use a fuse holder. This will only keep your car or whatever from melting to the ground when something finally does pinch or whatever, something goes wrong. So anyway, battery, fuse holder, we're gonna run that straight into terminal number 87 here, okay? And then from there, from terminal number 30 into the 12 volt positive input of our compressor, our fuel pump, our fans, whatever you want. Now, I want to control this switch through a typical, I'm going to draw a toggle switch over here real quick. Alright, there's our toggle switch. I know I'm not the best drawer in the planet, but you get the idea. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ground this leg, one of the legs of the switch. I'm just going to go ahead and ground it. This switch is inside the car, okay? And I'm just going to run a tiny ground wire. And then from there, I'm going to go from the switch to our friend 86, okay? Now whenever this switch is on, it's going to allow ground to get to go through the switch and get to terminal 86. Now, you can also, here's another thing. You can also wire 85 or 86. It doesn't matter. This can be power, and this could be ground. This could be ground, and this could be power. It really doesn't matter. As long as it sees power and ground on either side of that coil, it's going to magnetize and complete this circuit here from 87 to 30. So you can control it with a ground off a toggle switch, or you could you could have it to where it's constantly controlled by your switch, and you would simply just jump a wire from 87 to 85. Okay. Now once you got that wired up, all you'd have to do is control it with that toggle switch. You can turn it on and off. That is switching the relay through the ground, okay? Now let's say you got let's say you want to wire it through to come on when the car comes on with a key switch, all right? So go ahead and look at this other graph here. It's the same as the other one. Same fuse holder, same pump, whatever, fan, you name it, whatever you want to call it. And let's over here draw a, well, try to draw a, I'm not the best drawer on the planet, so bear with me. Anyway, this will be a, let's just call that a key switch. Go ahead and call that our key switch, okay? So I want this pump to come on, my fuel pump to come on when I turn the key of the car on, when I turn the ignition on. So again, 12 volt to the fuse, from the fuse to 87. Okay, that's going to be our thicker gauge wire going from the battery to the 87, and then from 30 again over to our pump. Okay, simple enough. Now, since we want to use the key ignition to turn the pump on and off, we're going to go ahead and ground our friend 85 over here. And then, you know, obviously there's a key switch. There's already power going into the key, so I'm just going to draw this wire representing power going into the key switch. So once you found a switched 12 volt ignition, when you turn the key on and you found 12 volts there, you just simply run that to your key switch. So now when you turn your key forward, it's going to energize this coil, and it's going to allow current from 87 to pass through to 30 and turn on your fuel pump. Pretty damn simple. That's just another way you can wire it. Let's go ahead and play with some fans now. You know, because some people like having their fans onto a toggle switch. Some people like to use a thermostatic control on-off switch. But like I said, the fundamentals and the ways you wire it, it's all pretty much the exact same. So we got our electric fans here. Okay. Here's our engine here, because like I said, some people like to use a whatchamacallit, a thermostatically controlled on-off switch. And what those do is those switches are normally open, and when they reach a certain temperature, the circuit becomes normally closed. The circuit closes. Normally open means that there is no current flowing through it. Normally closed means that the circuit is complete and there's current flowing through it. So most of these thermostatic on-off switches are normally open until they reach that certain temperature, and then they close, allowing current to pass through. So anyway, I'm gonna quit rambling. We got our fan here. We want our fan to come on when our motor reaches whatever the thermostatic temp switch is. Most are like the fan comes on at 185 and it shuts off at like 165. Simple. So again, 12 volts fused coming from the battery. Back to our friend 87 again. Oh shit, we're gonna need to ground our fans too, because I'm an idiot. Yeah. Alright, fans grounded now. Again, from 30 to our fan. Okay. Now, I explained to you guys about the key ignition, the 12 volts. Either way, it doesn't matter as long as there's 12 volt positive on this side. It can be from a key, it could be from a toggle switch. You could make a jumper wire that jumps from 87 to 85, which, you know, some people do, or you could have this on your keyed ignition. You can have this on a key ignition to turn it on. It'll only allow the fans to come on when the key's on. Now, here's our engine over here. The engine is grounded, obviously, so your alternator can charge and all that sort of stuff and all that good stuff. And then the thermostatic switch is typically located up on the intake here, and that's just a single wire input that pretty much, when it gets to that certain temperature, it completes a circuit of ground. So it'll run ground to 86 here. So when this thermostatic switch gets up to, let's just say it's 185 on switch, when it gets up to 185, that switch will close, and it will allow ground to go through the switch to our relay, energizing the coil, allowing current to pass from 87 to 30. Pretty simple. Alright guys, so now that we understand the fundamentals of the relay and pretty much how they work, let's go ahead and put some of what we learned into real life situations. Just for shits and giggles here, we got an air compressor. We've got our battery again. We've got a toggle switch, a very small toggle switch, a fuse holder, and our relay friend. So let's go ahead and make this compressor work from this relay using this teeny tiny toggle switch. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright guys, so now I got pretty much everything set up, and just to even make it a little more realistic, this bar here is going to represent a chassis ground. As of now, I've got the air compressor grounded to the frame of the car, LOL. I've got the battery grounded to the frame of the car again. 12 volt coming from the battery going into our fuse holder that I was telling you guys about. Then this is just going to be for our relay trigger, and this is going to be the main power going to our compressor. So now what have we learned in our video here? From the battery to 87, and then the compressor here, this is the power going to the compressor, black and white wire. We're going to hook that up to our friend 30. Okay. Now, trigger side. This is going to be a relay switched through ground. So this is just constant 12 volts, also tied into our fuse holder down here. But this could also be a switch power, or however you want to wire it. Like I said, there's so many millions of different ways to wire it. Now, the only thing we're lacking is a ground wire, some means of energizing this coil here. So I got this wire here going to our toggle switch here, and the other side of the toggle switch I've also got grounded to our chassis ground. So now that we got it wired up, when I flip this switch on, that compressor should fire right up. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, it's working. Alrighty. So as you can see here, I'm literally controlling, I know this isn't really like a super high amperage compressor or anything, but I'm controlling that compressor's on and off through this little teeny tiny microscopic freaking on off switch. And that is why we use relays. And hopefully I was able to, you know, there's probably 1.5 million videos on how to wire relays on freaking YouTube, but you know, you guys have been following me along building this C10 build. I figured I'd include you guys in and show you guys how I plan on wiring my compressor up, and also drop a little bit of knowledge to you guys about relays. Like I said, there's probably 150,000 videos just on what I just talked about, so hopefully I didn't confuse the hell out of you. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for this episode. Hopefully it was helpful, and hopefully you guys learned a thing or two about relays. Now all I gotta do is wait for my valves here, but in the meantime, I gotta get this compressor wired up on this truck. So stick around. When the valves get here, it'll be time to plumb and wire everything, and we'll be hitting some switches homes. So yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Like it, subscribe, whatever you gotta do. Thanks again. Alright you guys, so that's pretty much it for this episode. Hopefully, episode with an F. Episode. Hey. Fucking shit. Ozzy fucking Ozzy. Crazy train, dude, yeah.